let's. So I can't say whatever I want. Great. It's been recorded, so everything I say will now stay for posterity.
Even this.
Huh?
Even this.
Yeah, but okay, at least I get to air my disappointment at this, and then we. All right. Welcome. Thank you for coming. You could have done a bunch of things on a Friday evening, but you chose to listen to me. This is lovely. I love talking forever, so this works very well. I think I'm familiar with a lot of you. I've seen you before. Sadly, I'm aging, so I can't remember everyone's names anymore, but feels like some faces are rather familiar, some new. For those who haven't met me before, I'm Anirudh. I work at a consulting company. I first decided I want to be a professor, so I studied physics. Then I decided I don't want to be one, so I went to business school. And then now I'm just randomly advising companies on what they should do about their businesses without knowing anything about what they do. So we are just operating on confidence here. So yeah, that's a bit about me. So I used to study at Northwestern, where I originally thought, so they used to serve from the temple, they used to serve lunch for $5 a box. I thought it was a scam. I was like, how can you serve such lovely food for $5? There's clearly a plot here. But then the winter that year was really bad. This was 2015, and I was a horrible cook. So I was like, okay, whatever it is, maybe this is a scam, but hey, let's eat it. Became friends with some of the people from the temple, and then ended up thinking it's a good idea to pursue some spiritual interest. So that's how I got all interested in Krishna consciousness and Vedic principles and all that, despite being an avowed atheist till 2015. That's a bit about me. The topic today is the journey, the destination, which was a fancy way of talking about something slightly related but slightly different. So were all of you here last week? For those of you who weren't, just let me know, because it relates a bit to what happened last week. This was were there or were not there?
Not there.
Not there. Okay, great. So the majority were not there. Okay, so last week we had His Holiness Swayam Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj, who spoke about the 18 lies of life. Was that right, Girish? Yeah. The basic idea there was that he was trying to explain that there are like some of these truths that people tell us, but not all of these are necessarily true, at least if you look at them from the viewpoint of the Bhagavad Gita. So he had 18 of these, with each one corresponding to one chapter from the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. One of the ones he gave was that the world says, try to be the best at something. And what the Bhagavad Gita teaches us is do your best and leave the results to Krishna. Okay. So this is like what the world says. This is what Bhagavad Gita says. Okay. I saw it and I thought this was kind of interesting. So maybe let's kind of explore this a little further. Think about why would it make sense to, focusing more on doing our best as opposed to, this kind of goal of being the best. And then throughout, we'll try to kind of incorporate some of the basic ideas that we learn in Vaishnava philosophy. Hopefully it will all make sense. If it doesn't, please ask questions. We can try to get answers together, right? Okay. So just to set the context, really. Okay, fine. Bhagavad Gita says Krishna is like, hey, do your best, leave all the results to Krishna. That's amazing. But is this even a bad idea? Like, let's say someone actually tells you, hey, it's amazing to be ambitious. You should try to be the best at whatever it is that you're doing. What's the good of it? What's the bad of it? I have some thoughts, but love to hear if you have any ideas, any thoughts, opinions.
Bad of it is ego.
Sorry?
We may develop ego when maybe the.
Okay, lovely. High ego, especially if you're actually the best at something, right? High ego when successful. Okay, lovely. I saw another hand up.
Pressure.
Pressure, okay. Yes, it is stressful. No doubt. What else?
For the good part, you have ambition.
Okay. I had others saw the hands up. Yes, please.
In the name of trying to be the best, we forget what we're really doing or what we want to do or something, why we started. We forget why we started.
Lose track of the big picture, right? My laziness is getting so many shortcuts. Yes.
I have this like nowadays it's not even be the best, it's like seem the best.
Okay.
Even if someone says be the best, at least they're doing something. Nowadays it's just feel the best. Should look like you the best.
Okay. So you're saying it's kind of like even thinking about something like this
Yeah.
feels a bit fake.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did not think about it, but makes a lot of sense now that you say it. Yes. Sorry.
Materialistic attachments.
Okay. Hey, by the way, it doesn't have to be bad. Huh? Like I started with the premise that, oh, this has to be bad. You're just piling on it right now. Materialistic, this and that. Like it can be good also. Like, huh?
Rewarding.
Yeah, rewarding.
Resilience.
Ah, now we are getting into interesting things.
Truthfulness.
1 minute, huh? Did someone say, what was the last one that folks said?
Truthfulness.
Truthfulness as a good? As a good?
Yeah.
Say more. Like as in what do you mean?
Truthfulness.
Like as in,
As in every part of life, every situation, as we live by.
okay, so there's some kind of honesty involved.
Honest. Yeah.
Okay, great. Anything else about this? Yes.
We can teach other.
Sorry.
We can teach other.
Okay,
people.
you can share the good stuff. That's lovely. What else?
Expecting validation. It could be bad. We expect validation to be the best.
Okay.
Unknowing.
So you're seeking validation, which is like, yeah, can get stressful, right? Yes.
I have an issue with the points honesty and resilience in the good side. I don't get how they come there and how like they're directly opposing validation.
Who said honesty and who said resilience?
Resilience.
Please explain to Rick.
Okay, what I think is when you say you be the best or you try to be the best or you seem to be the best, you don't understand, after a while, you don't understand the concept of failure. You never give up. So you just keep on doing, even if you're failing at every step, you just keep on doing, you never quit. So that's where you build your resilience, is what I say.
If you're sufficient, at least what I'm gathering is, if you're sufficiently committed to being the best, you keep pushing yourself. And so there's some kind of resilience there.
We try your best, not be the best.
You're setting a goal and you're trying to get to it. You're not necessarily thinking in terms of, oh, I did my best, let me move on. Maybe I'm not good enough. At least that's how I'm understanding what you said. I don't intend to put words in your mouth, but that's how I was thinking. May not make sense because, yes, there's a reason why there's good and bad. So for the honesty bit, like again, I can, but I don't want to speak on behalf of the person. So, whoever it was, maybe it wasn't you. Whoever said honesty, please help us out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, it felt like it's right. Sometimes things just feel right. I don't know what, to me at least, it feels like, okay, one way of thinking about it, at least the moment you said it, what came in my mind was that maybe it forces you to be honest with yourself, right? Like, because if you're saying, okay, I want to be the best at something, and you're not, at some point you have to accept it and start facing the reality and seeing what you need to get done. You can't live in this kind of hypothetical like scenario where you're just like, yeah, of course I'm the best, because the results are speaking. You're not. And so you have to confront it and maybe think about it. At least that's what came in my mind. So, again, like I said, it's not like we're not talking science, right? We are talking in terms of how our life experiences have worked out for us, what we've grown up with, what we've thought about. So there'll always be a bit of
That would be like a reality check instead of honest. Honest is a very strong word.
you latched onto this. Fine. Fine. Okay. we have a refinement. It's a reality check. Okay. So by the looks of it, it seems like you have a few things that are good about it. This part especially looks very interesting. There's also some bad to it. So it seems like anything else in life, right? You're like, yeah, there's some good, there's some bad, whatever. Vans prasadam. So I sat down a bit about that. I started thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, it does feel a bit like anything else in life, where there's some good, some bad. Maybe take the good, discard the bad, do whatever. But what I felt, and maybe I don't know, I would love to hear what you guys think. My bigger problem with this whole thing, this whole business of being the best versus doing your best, I just feel when people say be the best, that whole picture is incomplete to me. Like there's something about this that doesn't add up. Like people are saying, okay, be the best. You have to really, do it. You got this, whatever, work hard enough and you'll make it. Somehow it doesn't make sense to me. I sat down to think about it for a bit and I was like, this whole picture is incomplete. Something about this doesn't click. And then I started thinking a bit more because I decided to just stay at home for Labor Day instead of having fun. And so then I started thinking a bit more about this and I was like, okay, it seems like, at least in my head, there's a few assumptions we make when we say be the best. And then I started asking myself, okay, what are these assumptions and why are they such a problem, or at least why they're necessary? And so we'll talk a bit about that, and then we'll connect it to like what the Bhagavad Gita says in a bit. And as you've done already, please contribute, ask questions, correct points that I make. All good. So I'll give you like some things that I feel we assume when we tell people, just be the best. And you can help me figure out whether they make sense or not. Okay. So the first thing is it's for me, like the first big assumption is that only my effort matters. What I mean by this is that like the assumption normally is that, okay, you just put in a ton of effort into this, it will work out because that's just how life works. You work very hard, you get what you want. You don't get what you want, you're just not working hard enough. And so, at least to me, it seems like when people say, okay, be the best, they're also saying, yes, you just keep working, it'll work out somehow. We'll get to why I think these assumptions are problematic in a moment. Let me just list them out first, and then we can start thinking a bit about them. The other one that I felt is that I actually know what it takes to succeed. Right? Or that I can find it out. So basically, you're saying when you're telling someone, okay, you could be the best, you're also, in a way, telling them, there's a very nicely laid out roadmap. Follow the motions, you'll get there. Amazing. Basically, combine this with this. Ta-da, you're the best. Something else about this that doesn't make sense to me. If they can, so can I. Comparisons, right? Like, oh, that kid scored 100% in mathematics, whatever. You can do it too. I'm like, no, I can't because I tend to get nervous in tests. But they're like, that's a you problem. That doesn't sound like it. They can, you should be able to do it too. How did I put this? This is the one that really messed with my head, which is this is right for me. almost always when you're trying to pursue a very ambitious goal, like trying to be the best at something, it takes a lot of time. So you're also in some sense assuming that it's actually the right thing for you to do, to invest all your time and energy into actually succeeding in whatever it is that you do. And then the more meta one, this will make me happy. At the end of it, a lot of things we do, some things we do because we should, some things we are just hoping will make us happy. So at least if you're committing to a big goal of trying to achieve excellence in some area, odds are at some point you're hoping something good is going to come out of it. And whatever that said good is, it kind of make you happy. In my head, all of these can be questioned. Like none of these assumptions actually hold if you just sit down to think about it for a bit. What do I mean by that? Like only my effort matters. Is this even true? No. Why not?
You have teachers, you have colleagues who support you. There's so many people.
So there's a support system. That's true. Why else is it not true?
Right place at the right time or right idea at the right time. Without that, whatever effort you put doesn't actually pan out. Luck.
Yeah. What else?
We are not good at everything.
Right.
Variables that we can't control.
Sorry.
Variables that we can't control. Like if I'm going to a test and the weather is bad.
Circumstance, you mean? Right. So there seem to be a bunch of things that are not even in my control and that could affect the outcome. Right? So it's not necessarily you do whatever you need to do, things will happen. Right? How many of you have read this book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers or have heard of the book? So the book is called Outliers. If you ever get a chance, borrow a copy. It's a very fascinating book. So Malcolm Gladwell in this book basically talks about how you could be doing a bunch of things right, but a lot of times like success is attributable to, as Mahinji and some of you are pointing out, circumstance. So he actually has this example there where he talks about how if you look at the Canadian ice hockey teams, almost every Canadian ice hockey team, the majority were born in the first half of the year and not in the second half of the year. They're all between January to June born people and not June to December. You're like, okay, that's weird. Like, how does that have anything to do with succeeding in ice hockey? So his explanation is, so he started probing it a bit deeper, and his explanation is, so independent of whether you're born in Jan or December, if you're born in the same year, odds are you'll be in the same class, right? Now, the folks who were born earlier may end up becoming like physically a bit larger than the ones who were born a little later. So like the taller kids or the stronger kids in a given class were all kids who were born in the first half of the year, on average, compared to the second half. So you put all these young kids who are barely learning ice hockey, and they're very young, in a place and you're asking them to play, it's a very physical sport. So it's like the people who are bigger end up doing a better job. And so the coaches end up thinking, oh, wow, these kids are playing really well, and they give them even more coaching. And the ones who were born a little later, they have to work extra hard to prove themselves. So these people get better and better and better. And those don't necessarily get that opportunity. And then you look at the ice hockey team and you're like, oh, wow. The majority were people who were born in the first half of the year and not in the second half of the year. Now, who could have controlled this? That kid could not have controlled when they were born, for the most part. But then it's circumstance. And now they are in this weird spot where they may be really good at ice hockey, but their coach doesn't believe so. And so they are, maybe they choose something else to do with their life. And there's a bunch of examples in the book, and there's a whole theory around it. The book also talks about how Bill Gates actually mentioned that hard work, all that was great. Like, this is not to say that working is not important, but he also talks about how his family was one of the few families in America that back in the 60s had a computer. Wasn't a thing back then. So, but somehow his family was into it, and he started messing around with computers at a much younger age than most people would. And so that gave him more time to think about these things and then eventually do the things that he ended up doing later in life. Circumstance, right? Again, this is not like it's an opportunity, it came. Now, of course, one can argue he made the best of what he had, but also if the opportunity wasn't there, what would he have done? He would have probably done something else fairly lovely too, or fairly amazing, but maybe not this. So this business of only effort mattering is a bit of a problem. Not true. Do we always know what the path to succeeding is, or do we always know how things work, why things happen? Yeah,
We don't know, but if we have a teacher, then we might.
we could know. Okay. Fine, fair enough. Could know. Any other thoughts?
It's because of this that we have the saying, let's cross the bridge when we get at it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm getting lazy. I'll just put let's cross and then talk. We know what we try. Other thoughts?
We could know the path, but we don't know the obstacles between them.
You don't know what could go wrong, right? Yes,
Better try than not do anything.
for sure. For sure. Just that the trying won't necessarily guarantee, because it could work, it could not. All of this make a ton of sense to me. I was also thinking about how the other part that I was trying to say here is that the number of tiny things that have to work out correctly for even the simplest things to happen is huge, right? Like, for example, the fact that I'm here today meant that my boss had to not mind me leaving at like a fairly early hour on a Friday. I had to be in good health. I actually had to have prepared something. I should not have had any stage fright. Should have actually turned up on time. So many things had to work out. The car wouldn't have had to break down. And this is just for me. And the fact that there's about whatever, like 30, 35 of us in this room, if you think about it, it's a miracle. Because there's so many things that had to work out correctly in the background for all of us to be here at this moment. No way we could have controlled each of these variables, right? Like there's just way too many things happening. So every time I think that something is working out, amazing. But there's also 100,000 things that were working in the background to make that work. And I wasn't even thinking about them. I was once like when I was in college, to eat just about anything and everything at that point because, hey, young, right? Metabolism takes care of everything. But at some point, I had some kind of an issue with my food pipe and it started to hurt. And then I realized how complicated even the act of like chewing something and swallowing it. It's like there are angles to this. I had never even thought about it. I was like, oh, it's an apple, it's a cookie, whatever it is, it would just keep going. And then at some point, I was like, wow, this is actually a very complex process. I never even sat down to think about how I'm eating. And now that I think about it, certain foods seem to affect my food pipe in a certain interesting way. Like some things have sharp edges, some don't. If I bite them enough, it wouldn't hurt me. But if I didn't chew them enough, it would hurt me. I was like, wow. I just kept eating for all these years and never even sat down to think about how even this very supposedly simple process actually has a bunch of details going on. So do we really know? Maybe not. Just because you know what you know, but there's a ton of things you don't. So there's some balance there. If they can, so can I. We all know. Different people, different circumstances. Da, 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 da. This is right for me. When you're investing in something, can we say for sure this will work out?
That's a white lie, I think, that we tell ourselves.
Okay.
But not unless we have like evidence Like if suppose we took a CS degree here and we chose it after, okay, I'm good at CS, I practice the bit, maybe I'll be good at it. It's backed by something, then it's good.
So maybe okay if there's evidence.
I think like it's not like that thing is like right for me, but like it's something. We start for it. So until unless we start something, we don't know whether it is right for me or not. But sometimes we think it is right for me, but at the end we feel like, oh, I tried this much, but still at the end it is like I don't feel really joy, or like I don't really my values are not there in this.
Right.
Mostly it comes down maybe like a subject or like circumstances or life, anything.
Fair enough. So one more. So it sounds a lot like, okay, you could try it out and maybe you'll realize at the end that this wasn't what I wanted. Which also, to some extent, you connected to this, which is like, hey, maybe I'm not as satisfied.
Based on our point, it's a point in time of sort of reference. Like, okay, I start my journey with certain assumptions that this is good or I like this, but by the end you realize it is not what it is, but it's not what I thought it is. And then at that time, there may be something else that we feel is right.
So we change, life changes, things happen. And so what felt right at some point may not necessarily be right, maybe 1 year later, maybe 2 years later, whatever. When I was in college, I was very proud about not sitting for even a single job interview because I was like, money is evil. People should be doing research, especially research in pure sciences where there's no evil forces like money. And so I was very proud of the fact that I never sat for a single job interview, only applied to grad schools, will end up becoming a professor in physics, and this is how everybody should live their life. Okay? 7 years later, I got my PhD. For those of you who joined a bit later, you probably didn't realize how excited I got by people talking about money like a little while. I was like, that's my absolute favorite part of this conversation so far. So people change, like circumstances change. I mean, I'm of course trivializing what happened. It was a much longer thought process that went into it. But one more. I think you were trying. Just give me a moment. But actually, go on.
But also, if we don't keep telling ourselves this is right for me, sometimes telling that to yourself gives you a sense of confidence and gives you resilience. Okay, I can do it. Gives us a belief in ourselves if we keep telling ourselves it is right.
So I guess it kind of connects to the white lie point that you were making, right? Which is that, hey, you got to start somewhere, which also one of you, someone else also said, you need to try. So yes, there is some merit to it. It's not like entirely lost. Sorry, you had it.
That we force ourselves to believe that it is right for us.
We force
We
ourselves.
force ourselves to believe that it is right for us, depending on the circumstances and the situations that might change in the future.
Right. So it again goes back to some extent to what was happening here, which is that we think this will work. We maybe started off with a very nice intent, which was, hey, this is just for me to motivate myself to get things done to the point that you were making. But then this happens, and then you realize, oh, maybe this wasn't as perfect. So in other words, basically, we've come to this kind of a picture where we are again saying, okay, yeah, there is a bunch of assumptions. A fair number of them are questionable. They could work, they could not work, but somehow something about this business of trying to be the best is a little tricky. Sorry, you were saying. Of course you can.
If you try to be the best, it means there's only one person who is the best. So only one person can achieve the goal at one point. It doesn't make sense trying to be the best. I guess. Because statistically there's more chance of failure than success.
Right. Because the majority are not going to be the best. And so there's only one, at least for a generation, who will be considered the best. And then someone else comes. And then we defend the previous one. Federer is still the best. He might have won 20 Grand Slams. Djokovic might be statistically the one with 24, but no one can play as elegantly as Federer can. Blah, blah, blah. Make up these stories and then whatever. Like,
we don't really know what's the best dream.
Exactly. Because the definition of the best also is like,
We don't know what's the best is.
it's up in the air. We don't even know what, because even the standards keep changing with time, which again is most easily seen in sport, where the record for what's like who's considered the fastest person in the world, the 100-meter record keeps getting broken again and again. So at some point, someone was the best. They're irrelevant at this point. Like if you take the record from the 70s, okay, great, fantastic job, but people are at least a second faster or something now. Even the standards themselves change. So something about this picture is rather messy and not very satisfying. So then the question becomes, okay, can't just leave it at a mess. I have to clear the mess now. So what do we do? We could do a bunch of things. We'll try to figure out what Krishna tried to suggest. We'll also try to go back to why Swayam Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj was try your best and leave the results to Krishna, as opposed to the whole business of be the best. By the way, so far so good. Things are adding up, kind of.
Yes.
Question. All right. So some of the things that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, we've already kind of hinted at when we talked about this whole business of how, there's so many factors involved and all of that. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says that for any action, there's actually 5 different components involved. 5 different components involved. So there's your body, your physical body, there's your senses, there's your soul, there's the actual activity you're performing, and then there's the super soul, the Krishna. Oh, whatever name best appeals to you. This somewhat seems to be in our control, somewhat in our control, hopefully. This is a bit of a question mark. Do we even understand what we're thinking at a soul level? The activity you kind of know usually what you want to do. This is the big question mark. What does God want? I don't know. I usually don't know, at least in my case, I'm not the best at this. But the point is that all 5 of these typically combine in any action, any outcome, whatever you're doing. All 5 of them are working together. And while there's some things you may have some sense of what's going on, no pun intended. This is the big question. We don't know. And that is not to scare us. Like, it's not that, oh my God, I don't know what God's will is. The bigger question is, can I trust God? A lot of times, so in one of the purports in the Bhagavad Gita, there's also this comment on how the soul and the super soul are like 2 birds on a tree that are kind of sitting together. And the soul is just, doing its thing. Hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. And the super soul is just observing. That's God. God is just like, oh, you want to do this? Go ahead, do that. Don't want to do it? But things do change when you start when you start to appreciate that, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm not entirely in control. Maybe this, in a way, is like the most important part. And so maybe I want to turn my attention towards God, towards my true self, and say, what do I do? What is it that I really want? Depending upon how good I feel about this, how honestly I'm trying to do it, there's some direction. Sometimes there's guidance, sometimes we're all in the process of trying to figure out, like our gut instinct, if you will, sometimes is sometimes this, but sometimes it isn't, by the way. I'm not saying it always is, but if you're sufficiently connected, this starts to play a bigger role. And now what you're doing is not like, you're not trying to set up your own plan and do things, but rather you're trying to align yourself with a larger plan. You're start trying to say, okay, there's factors beyond my control. There seems to be a larger plan in place. Let me see how I can participate in this larger plan. So you're thinking more about, let me do my best, what seems to be right to me, but the outcome, who knows? Who knows what it is even meant to be? It might be something entirely different from what I imagined, and that's okay. That's fine. I have faith that this person's my best friend. They're not really here to like hurt me. They're only trying to help. And that's what God is always trying to do. Krishna is always trying to help us get closer to him. He's not really trying to mess with us. Okay. So that's like a bit of what the Bhagavad Gita says. What's also good about this, which I'll get to in a moment, is that it also helps you realize how once you start to see that there is a bigger plan in place, it gets a little easier to kind of accept the good and the bad. Because life keeps fluctuating. Good things happen, bad things happen. Good things happen, bad things happen. Sometimes we didn't intend for the bad things to happen. Sometimes we didn't intend for the good things to happen. Like the other day, one of my friends who works at a startup was like, Anirudh, at times my team gives me hell for like, things that I did absolutely right. And then on other days, they're complimenting me for things that I didn't even do. They're like, oh my God, this worked out thanks to you. And I'm like, you know what? This evens out in the end. You gave me a hard time despite me having worked really hard. So now you're giving me credit for things that I didn't do, but you know what? I'll take it. Because in the end, it's okay. So sometimes things happen when you didn't intend. Good things happen when you didn't intend for them to happen. Bad things also happen when you didn't intend for them to happen, because the core principle is that we are not entirely in control of what's happening. Not to say we have no agency. We have some agency because we've seen that some of these are definitely within the control of what we can do, but some are not. And so the idea is to create some kind of a harmony between these, to try to connect with who we truly are so that we can respond better to the plan that God might have for us. And then we work in unison as a team, as opposed to trying to beat each other. It may so be that your role in the world is meant to be the best at something or some point in time. Okay, just keep doing your thing and then see where that takes you. As opposed to like, okay, I absolutely have to achieve blah. The other good thing about this is that it's not easy to not think about goals. Like, okay, sure, I mean, you could say that, oh, I mean, it seems like it's a much easier thing to do. Don't have any goals, just keep doing things, but that's not the point. The point is, you still, to the point that actually a lot of you brought up, you still have to try hard. Because again, we have to endeavor with full sincerity, just that we know it's not the outcome that's entirely in our control. So you're still thinking about your process. You're still thinking about, okay, what could I do differently? How could I improve this? The only point